Welcome to Deductzen. If you're here, you probably earned overtime or tips in 2025, and you're trying to figure out what counts, how much may qualify, and what you'll need to do to get an accurate deduction number. This walkthrough follows the exact screen-by-screen flow from start to finish, so you can see how fast it is to go from, "I'm not sure what I qualify for," to a clean report you can hand to your tax professional. We're starting on the Deductzen homepage at deductzen.com/calculator. Right away, Deductzen gives you a completely free assessment. The goal is to quickly understand how complex your situation is, so we can guide you to the right calculator and help you avoid common mistakes that can throw off overtime and tip calculations. At the top right, you can log in if you already have an account. And if you ever need help, there's a help portal where you can submit a support request. But the fastest way to get answers is down here in the bottom right. This is Maya, your in-app helper. Maya is built to guide you through the product as you go. One feature I really want you to notice is the screenshot button. If you ever get stuck or you're unsure what a field means, you can capture exactly what you're seeing and share it with Maya, and Maya can help you with the exact step you're on. Now let's get started with the free assessment. The first question says, pick the one that fits you best. Option 1, I work for a company. Option 2, I work for myself. Option 3, I do both. For this example, I'm selecting I work for a company. Next, Deductzen asks about your pay rate. Either you get paid different rates or you get paid the same rate for everything. I'm selecting I get paid different rates. Next is tips. Either you earn tips at work or no tips for you. I'm selecting I earn tips at work. Next, Deductzen asks what kind of tips you have. Are your tips voluntary, meaning the customer decides whether to tip and how much? Or are your tips mostly service charges and auto gratuities, where the tip amount is automatically applied and the customer doesn't choose the amount? Examples of service charges and auto gratuities could include certain catering situations or some hospitality environments where charges are applied automatically. For most tipped roles, customers choose the tip amount, so for this example, I'm selecting voluntary tips. Next, Deductzen asks about overtime. Did you work any overtime or did you not work any overtime? I'm selecting yes, I worked overtime. Next, Deductzen asks whether any special overtime rules apply. Public safety officers like firefighters, police, EMT, and corrections officers can have special overtime rules. Healthcare workers like nurses, CNAs, and hospital workers can also have special rules. For most people, it's the regular overtime rules, so I'm selecting regular overtime rules. Next, Deductzen asks, when do you get overtime? This question is looking for daily overtime rules. Some people get overtime after 8 hours in a workday. This can happen because of a union agreement, a collective bargaining agreement, or because they work in a state with daily overtime rules, like California. If daily overtime doesn't apply to you, you would select that you only get overtime after 40 hours in a week. For this example, I'm selecting overtime after 8 hours in a day. Next, Deductzen asks about bonuses. Did you receive any bonuses this year, or did you not receive any bonuses? The reason Deductzen asks this is because certain bonuses can affect how overtime is calculated, and Deductzen wants to factor that in so your numbers are more accurate. Now we create an account. I'm setting a password, checking both acknowledgement boxes, and clicking Show me my results. Next, Deductzen asks me to verify my email. So I go to my inbox, click the verification link, and that brings me right back into the app, fully logged in. And here are my results. This is the free assessment summary, and it's immediately useful because it shows what you may qualify for and what makes your situation more complex. In this example, it shows that I qualified for tips and I qualified for overtime. Based on my answers, I could have up to $25,000 in available tip deduction, and I may qualify for the overtime deduction as well. It also confirms the key factors we entered. I have daily overtime, I have multiple pay rates, and I received a bonus. This is the point where you decide if you want to run the full calculator. The calculator is $99, and it's designed to help you accurately calculate what qualifies, then generate a clear report you can hand to your tax preparer. And here's what makes this an easy decision. Deductzen includes a $99 guarantee. If your calculator shows less than $99 in deductions, you get a full refund. So you're not taking a risk to find out your real number. A couple of additional things to notice here. If you're a tax professional and you want report access for clients, there's a dedicated option right here. And if you're an affiliate partner or you want to share Deductzen with your coworkers, clients, or community, You can sign up for the partner program and earn commissions for referrals. You'll also see the countdown to tax season. Now let's purchase and start the calculator. I'm clicking purchase and it opens a Stripe checkout portal. One important thing to know is that Deductzen never has access to your credit card data. Stripe handles the payment securely end to end. After purchase, we start the calculator setup. First, I enter my name. Next, Deductzen asks how I file my taxes. For this example, I'm selecting single. Next, Deductzen asks how many jobs I worked. For this example, I'm selecting 2 jobs. Based on our assessment answers, Deductzen recommends the detailed calendar calculator. That's the best option when your situation includes things like daily overtime, multiple pay rates, or bonuses. But you're not locked into one option. With your subscription, you get access to all calculators, and you can return to the Select Calculator page anytime to switch. One more thing I want you to notice here is the running preview in the header. As you enter your information, Deductzen shows a live estimate of both your overtime deduction and your tip deduction right at the top. Now we're on the calculator flow page. We select the detailed calculator and hit continue. Now we're on the overtime entry screen. Because we selected 2 jobs, the calculator is already pre-configured for multiple employers. At the top, if you forgot an additional job, you can add another employer right here. And to switch between employer 1 and employer 2, you just use the tabs at the top. To enter overtime, you add your shifts on the calendar. You can paste shifts across other days so you don't have to re-enter the same schedule over and over. And one of the best time-saving features is the calendar assistant. Let's say I worked Monday through Friday all year at $40.50 per hour for 10 hours every shift. The calendar assistant will confirm which employer those shifts should apply to because we have multiple employers. Here it asks if those shifts are for A, B, C Corporation or Standard Accounting. I select ABC Corporation. Then it processes the request and asks if I want to add those shifts in bulk. In this example, it's 261 shifts. I confirm, and Deductzen adds them to the calculator. Now you can see every week with overtime turns red, so it's easy to visually confirm where overtime happened. And you can see your overtime premium calculation updating. It's visible at the bottom, and you also see the estimate in the header at the top. Now, if you worked multiple rates, you can add multiple shift entries. For example, maybe I worked 10 hours on January 1st at $39 an hour, and also 10 hours on January 1st at $40.50 an hour. You can add both, and Deductzen will calculate correctly based on the shifts you entered. The important thing to remember is you only enter your base rate. Deductzen calculates the overtime premium portion automatically. Now let's add a bonus. Click Add Bonus. For example, we'll choose Commission. We'll enter $1,000 monthly for January and add it. Now Deductzen includes that bonus in the overtime calculation, so your overtime premium estimate stays accurate. Now remember, we have 2 employers, so we can switch to the second tab and enter the second employer information the same way. Now that overtime is entered, let's move into tips. Now we're entering tips data. Just like overtime, tips can be entered for multiple employers using the tabs at the top. One important detail is that only certain professions are eligible for tips under the way the law was written, so Deductzen asks you to select the relevant profession. For this example, we'll choose bartender. Now, if you have a W-2, you can go to the Social Security tips number, typically in box 7, and enter that amount here. And if you're an independent contractor, you can enter unreported tips using the appropriate section based on Form 4137. Now here's the key part. When you calculate eligible tips, you need to exclude any scenario where the customer did not decide the amount of the tip. Only voluntary tips qualify, where the customer freely chose to tip and freely chose the amount. So, for example, if you identify that $2,349 of your tips were auto gratuities from large parties, you enter that excluded amount here. Now you can see the totals at the bottom. You see your Social Security tips, you see the excluded service charges, and you see the remaining eligible amount. And again, you can see a live preview of both your estimated overtime deduction and your estimated tip deduction right in the header. Now let's review our results. Before Deductzen finalizes your report, you get a chance to review all the information. You can review the overtime premium details and the tip deduction details. If everything looks good, you click Finalize Report. One important thing to know is that each purchase includes one finalized report. So this is the moment to review the executive summary, your overtime total, and your tip total before finalizing. What Deductzen generates here is a clean breakdown you can hand directly to your tax professional. It shows how you answered the assessment questions, so your tax preparer can understand your situation for the year. It shows the inputs you entered, and it shows the math Deductzen used to calculate your deductions. It also applies income phase-outs and annual caps as needed, and then summarizes the combined total. Now we finalize the report. And now your report is ready. Here, you can enter your accountant's information. If your accountant is already registered, they can access the report through their portal. You can also email the report to yourself or email it directly to your accountant. And if you want to download the report, you can download it right here. Now you can view your completed report showing the details for your overtime and tips for the year. That's the full Deductzen walkthrough. If you earned overtime or tips in 2025, start with the free assessment, run the calculator, and generate your report so you have a clean, accurate summary ready for tax filing. Quick reminder, Deductzen is informational only, not tax or legal advice, and results depend on the accuracy of the information you enter. If you have feedback, use the feedback button in the app. We actively use it to improve the product. And if you ever get stuck, use the chat with Maya, especially the screenshot feature, for fast help while you're on the screen. And if you need to reach us directly, email us at info@deductzen.com.